In many parts of Ontario, and particularly in the Greater Toronto Area, the availability of rental apartments is near record lows, with tenants bidding on leases, pushing rents up and vacancy rates down. One of the few growth areas on the supply side of the equation has been small landlords. Joining us for a look at this segment of the rental market, Kayla Andre. She is the founder of Ontario Landlord Watch, and she owns some rental units in Cambridge, Ontario. Ken Hale is here. He's legal director of Advocacy Centre for Tenants Ontario, ACTO for short. Mark Weislater, senior partner, realestateLawyers.ca LLP. And Joita Gupta, policy analyst with the Federation of Metro Tenants Associations. And we're happy to welcome all of you to TVO tonight for a timely discussion about the rental housing picture in the capital city and around the province. In Sheldon, Osmond, our director, is going to bring up this couple of graphics packages here just to show you what the picture is like across the province. Let's go back 20 years. 1995 to 2015, there were on average in this province a little over 3,200 rental units built annually. Since 1990, we've had more than 400,000 condos built. Also since 1990, only 143,000 plus purpose-built rental units. So you can see the difference there. Let's do one more board. If we go by rental units by numbers in the capital city alone, last year, 1,700 units occupied. This year, a little over 2,600 units delivered. But what do we need annually? 8,000. We need 8,000 units annually. At the moment, in the pipeline, there are a current proposed units of 27,000, and that's going out over a few years. So, with all of those numbers to chew on, let's just get started here and figure out what it all means. Kayla, get us started here. What story do these numbers tell, in your view?
What I see from the numbers and showing that there's condos, because now condo rules are usually top of the RTA, so we're going to see more investors.
RTA meaning?
The Residential and Tenancy Act, sorry.
Okay.
And when you're getting into the Residential and Tenancy Act and how that is, people would rather get into more condos because it's the Condo Act would surpass the Residential and Tenancy Act. So, and not only that, but for the purpose built and having the condo market itself, you're building more units and they're selling them off, so there's more money to be made on condos than there are on the overall building purpose-built residential properties.
And the numbers clearly reflect that. Ken, what do the numbers say to you?
The numbers say to me that the governments are downloading responsibility for making sure that everybody has a place to live onto the private market, to large developers, condo investors, people with second units, and the people who actually need the housing are having great difficulty in paying the kind of rents that it takes to make a profit in this market. So there's a whole segment of people that are being left out, even though we're building a lot of units. They're for the upper part of the market, and the people that there are a lot of people being left out.
The people who need more affordable rents are not seeing them.
And that has to be a government responsibility,
okay.
And that's
going to take
public money.
We're going to come back to that. Mark, what do the numbers say to you?
Well, it says to me that the condo market, because of those dramatic numbers, that shows that that has become the residential market, is that for most small investors, getting into a condominium is the best, one of the easiest ways to get into the market, not have to worry too much about maintenance because it's the condo fee that pays for it. And you've got a tenant that can pay you the rent and keep it going. So because so many of those condos that you mentioned are becoming rental units, it's not as though they're building less rental units. It's the condo market is displacing and becoming the new rental unit criteria for most people looking to rent today.
And instead of landlords putting up, multi-thousand unit buildings, we've got individual landlords one by one by one by one. That seems to be the way it's going. Okay, Joita, what's your view?
Well, Steve, you've got to put the numbers in context, bearing in mind that housing is a social need, a human right. We see that the government has consistently divested from the provision of all forms of housing, and it's left tenants at the mercy of private providers. There are good landlords, and there are bad landlords, and everything in between. But when you think about tenants, it's a real scramble to find a place to live, to try and make ends meet. And many people are moving away from our urban centres and trying to find options elsewhere. So when you get out out of the minutiae of the numbers, you're really looking at the big picture, and tenants are bearing the brunt of a housing crisis.
And do you think they're moving away because they just can't afford to live here anymore?
Yes, basically.
Okay. Ken, let's figure out who we're talking about here. The percentage of people who rent as opposed to the percentage of people who own, either in the province or in the capital city, is what? What's the ratio?
Well, it's pretty close to 50-50 in Toronto. When you get outside of Toronto, there's much higher ownership in other parts of the province.
But basically here it's half and half.
Yeah, and I think it's about maybe 2/3 ownership, 1/3 rental over the whole province.
I want to bring you in at this point again because you've been at this for a long time, right?
Long time.
How old were you when you rented your first unit?
18.
You've been a landlord since you're 18.
18 years
I
old.
won't ask how many years that's been, but we can assume it's more than a few. How's it worked for you?
I, as a landlord, I've been a landlord since age 18. I've never had a bad tenant, and I've never had a damaged unit, and I never missed out on a month's rent.
And
But
this is in Cambridge?
in Cambridge.
Okay.
But if you look at it, there's more of a detailed screening process that I'm going to do because of the way that small landlords are treated in Ontario. That's why I have to do the type of screening that I have to do so that I don't end up at the landlord and tenant board with a tenant that's not paying their rent or causing some type of dispute with other tenants and
Okay.
ruining the enjoyment of others.
Follow-ups here. You say you go through a more
In-depth.
in-depth process.
Yes.
What does that involve?
You're looking at 45 minutes each time I talk to a tenant. We need to make sure that, I can work with them, they can work with us. This is something of a business relationship, and that's what people got to understand is that landlords are business people, and we don't want to do anything that is very bad towards anybody. It's a business that we have to run, and the numbers mean everything to a landlord.
45 minutes, you ask a lot of questions, I guess, eh?
Oh, it's about connecting with them as a friend because we need to know that they're going to be able to work with us. We need to know that they know our rules. We know what they expect out of us.
What's the most invasive question you ask in that kind of circumstance?
Well, number one is where you work. That's the number one that people are like, well, I'm on OW or I'm on ODSP, and I say, that's fine. I have 2 tenants on OW and ODSP.
So that's not a deal breaker right there.
That's not a deal breaker for me, but for many, many investors in Ontario, it is, and they are the ones who are feeling this crunch of this housing crisis in Ontario.
You want to see bank statements from people?
There are many landlords out there that look for bank
How about
statements.
you? Do you ask for that?
Not so much for me. It's usually, you can kind of pinpoint out which ones are going to be good with their money by the way that they talk to you.
And because you do this in-depth interview, if you like, you have not had any problems over the years. You get all the answers you need ahead of time, and so it works out.
No problems.
Gotcha. Do you, let me go to the other side of the table. Joita, do you have any problem with that kind of a more intense, almost interview to make sure that everybody's on the same page going in?
Well, landlords are required to follow the law in screening potential tenants. The Residential Tenancies Act we referred to earlier, as well as the Human Rights Code, set out grounds and the ways and means by which a landlord can typically screen for tenants. I just want to take care of a bit of housekeeping. I know that point about the bad tenants, the ones who don't pay their rent and they abscond, I know that gets bandied about an awful lot, but it's worth mentioning that that's not generally the case. I think most of us landlords and tenant advocates alike would agree that that sort of thing is the exception and not the rule. So,
You know what? I got numbers on that. Should we bring this up right now? Sheldon, go ahead. Let's bring that. I thought we got this a little later, but what the heck? Joita's brought it up, so let's get on it right now. 98.5% of landlords get their rent. So I guess Joita is right. This notion of widespread tenant truancy just is really not happening according to the numbers that we've got here. 90% of applications brought to the Landlord-Tenant Board by landlords against tenants. Only 10% of the number of applications brought by tenants against landlords. So, okay, again, your numbers, you wanted to comment then?
well, here's the beauty of it. They're actually not our numbers at all. The 98.5% number comes from a landlord lobby. So you see, even landlords acknowledge that this myth of the truant tenant is just that. It's a myth, wildly blown out of proportion. As I said, just a bit of housekeeping, Steve, just wanted to get it out of the way. But to turn back to your point about looking for housing, bearing in mind that this is, and has been for a long time, a landlord's market, tenants are often feeling the pinch trying to find a place to stay.
Okay, you want to come back on that?
Well, I tend to agree that we lose sight of the fact that most landlords get along with tenants, and because the landlords appreciate that the tenants looks after their investment in exchange, and the landlord tries to be good. So I agree that there is a myth that the bad tenant, it's not the norm. But you have to do more and more, it seems now, to make sure that you're protected. And so now I'm seeing landlords, for example, check social media. You know, people ask me, you know, tenants don't tell the truth about pets, and you don't have to tell the truth about pets when you move in Ontario. You could lie and say, I don't have a pet, and bring in 2 dogs, and then the landlords can't do anything. So I say, check Facebook. If they got a dog, you'll find the dog on Facebook somewhere. And some good property managers are checking. People ask me, how do I know my tenant's not, you know, growing cannabis plants? Check Facebook. You'll see if they were having cannabis parties on October 17th. And more people are doing that as part of the screening process.
Just to be clear, having a cannabis plant is or is not illegal? I don't think it is anymore.
It's not illegal,
Right.
However,
But
you
some-
cannot grow a plant in a way that's going to damage the property or cause the landlord to lose their insurance. So there are ways that you can work with tenants on this issue and all issues. It's just, but I think that screening is getting more sophisticated as landlords are trying to literally look everywhere to make sure that they've got a tenant they can work with and grow with.
Well, I want to go through another number here. You know, we pointed out the ratio in applications that are brought to the Landlord-Tenant Board, and 90%, Ken, I need you to comment on this, 90% of these applications are brought by landlords against tenants. It's only 10% that are brought by tenants against landlords. What do you read into that?
Well, that's really what the Landlord and Tenant Board was set up for, to collect rents, to evict tenants who misbehave. Tenant applications are applications around maintenance. It's very difficult to get a maintenance application through the Landlord and Tenant Board. There's no real facilitation of group applications or anything. You know, when we have a high-rise building with big problems, each tenant has to go individually. We don't kind of look at them as a group. We don't, you know, it's there to help landlords collect their rents and to move people out who they don't want. So there are some tenants' rights that are there to balance it, but, you know, the extreme issue we have, the extreme imbalance with the low vacancy rate and lack of units, you know, allows what Kayla's talking about, very careful screening of people. And, you know, very careful screening of people is a really good idea, but in very tight markets, it can lead to unlawful discrimination, and that's kind of a concern that we have.
Well, let me pick up on, you used the word balance a moment ago. Let me pick up on that word here. Because from time immemorial, there's been a debate in the province about where the balance of rights lies. Does it tip more towards landlords or does it tip more towards tenants? I got a feeling I know what the 4 of you are going to say, but humor me and we'll go through this anyway. What do you think?
So I would like to point out that through the stats that you pointed out with how many applications are being brought to the Landlord and Tenant Board, I have found some stats from 2009 to 2010 stating that 71,000 applications have been brought to the board by the landlord, and that is through non-payment of rent. So that is the number one to suggest that the landlords are not getting their rent. And then the tenant applications, the stats back for that year was just over 6,000. And their number one application was for tenant rights, not even maintenance. So, and if you look at the between the Landlord and Tenant Board and how it's supposed to help landlords collect their rent, it actually doesn't. It just allows you to have a judgment, and there's no way for the Landlord and Tenant Board to enforce that judgment. So landlords are now having to take the next step and file with the small claims court, and now it's another cost, another situation being put out there, and that's why landlords are like, do we really want to go to the Landlord and Tenant Board and pay $175 to $190 for an application when we might not even see that application cost come from the tenants, and tenants only are allowed to spend $50, if not have that fee waived for them.
Let's also understand, and Mark, I'll get you in on this. You know, if you're a big, massive company and you've got a few tenants along the way that you're having problems with, that's probably manageable. If you've got 1 unit or 2 units or 3 units and you've got 1 tenant who's a problem, that's a third of, you know, that might be half or a third of your entire stock. So how complicated is it trying to get somebody evicted?
It's not simple. And even though they may talk about numbers, if everything goes well in your application without adjournments, without delays. You're looking from the time a person doesn't pay rent, 3 to 4 months, if everything goes perfectly. If you're a small landlord and you got to pay the mortgage every month, that's a real problem.
3 to 4 months without revenue is a
without
problem.
rent, that's a problem that small landlords that are very dependent on rent don't get. But when it comes to numbers as a whole, you know, as a lawyer, I get inquiries from both tenants and landlords. And I can say that the fact that I hear such animosity on both sides, you know what that tells me?
What?
The law works. If half the landlords are complaining and the tenants are complaining, that tells me that on the whole, the law works.
Well, but I'm not sure it's half and half. I mean, we just saw with the applications, it's 90-10.
But a lot of the applications, though, are, you know, based on non-payment of rent. You know, people need rent. It's not really about, you know, the discrimination. It's not about, you know, not treating me right. It's rent. You know, you sign a unit, you pay rent. So I think that sort of skews the numbers. You know, a landlord needs to collect the rent. And so that's why you get a law. But there aren't as many trying to force people out. Like a lot was made of the family reason, trying to get rid of the tenants through pretending to go in with your family so you could double the rent. Or a lot was made of these renovation reasons to evict tenants to unreasonably increase the rent. Those were also extremely low, the number, whereas the majority is rent.
We know
But
what it
that's
is.
the main
Okay.
thing.
And the overall numbers, if there's 1 million rental units approximately in the province, 70,000 applications, even I think that was the high water mark. That's, you know,
Pretty small percentage.
pretty
It's a
small
drop in the
percentage
bucket,
of most tenants. And ultimately, we
2010.
see the landlords getting 98.5% of their rent. I think any other business, I'm not sure if your law firm collects 98.5% of its billings, I would be surprised. But because they have that threat of eviction, people pay up. People take money out of their food budget and their clothes budget to get that rent paid, because for the tenant, you know, the landlord has an economic setback if they don't get rent paid. If the tenant is unable to make those rent payments and actually gets evicted, their life can be a mess.
How often does that happen, eviction?
Well, it's, you know, we've seen, I don't know the exact figures, I'm sorry, but, you know, the almost 50,000 L1 applications, how many of those result in eviction? See, we don't really have good statistics. We know how many applications there are. We know how many orders the Landlord and Tenant Board makes. The sheriff's office is the one who actually enforces those evictions. And we also, it's hard to count the tenants that move at various stages. Some tenants, when they get the notice, they move. Some tenants move before they get the notice because they see what's coming. Some tenants move at different stages. So it's very difficult. But
Okay,
I think
Joey,
the fact that there's 50,000 arrears applications every year gives us some kind of indication of the numbers of people who might be impacted.
What would you add to that, Joanna?
I would add a few more numbers, funnily enough. So if you look at the rate, one of the things that Ken talked about was our vacancy rate. That is the available number of units in a given market. That, in a place like Toronto, is sitting at the lowest it's ever been in the last 16 years, at about 1%, probably under that now. Rents for condo units, and this is, of course, you know, the kind of property that's owned by a small landlord, those shot up by about 11% in the last year. How many other classes of income earners do we know where, you know, their paychecks go up by 11%? I know most tenants wouldn't see that kind of growth in their paycheck. Now, the reason I bring this up is because when we have a conversation about evictions, it's so tempting to make it about who and how many tenants don't pay and where, you know, who's out a couple of months in terms of their mortgage payments. But I cycle back to what I said to you before, Steve. This is a social need and a human right. It's not even that avant-garde to say it anymore. I mean, our Prime Minister said it as part of the National Housing Strategy, if you remember, that housing is a human right. So the bigger question is, what is the best way to approach this problem so we can tackle the affordability crisis in
And
our
what's
city?
the answer?
You asked the tough question, Steve. And I think you have to answer your question, we've got to understand the breakdown of rental ownership. So about a year and a half ago, we had some data come out of the CMHC, that's the Canadian Housing and Mortgage Corporation, and they tell us about the ownership structure. 50% of all rentals are owned by individuals, 40% by companies, and about 10% by other miscellaneous types. To contrast that, if you go back to the 1940s, it was 100% of all rentals. That's what you got, was the lodger who would rent a basement or rent a room in somebody's house. But obviously, times have changed, the landscape has changed, and really what we need to think about are ways to improve public investment, because housing is a human right. Security of tenure for tenants is obviously a benefit, but it's also a public good. And so the government needs to spend money on it.
Okay, you say the government needs to spend money on it. We just had an election in this province about 6 months ago, and there's a new government in town that says the books are empty. The coffers are empty. There's not going to be massive new spending on purpose-built rentals. So we got to look for other ideas. Let me go to the other side of the table for a second. Got any new ideas?
Small landlords.
You're the solution.
Small landlords are going to be the solution to affordable housing.
How do you figure?
Because it's about a supply and demand issue. And I think if you watch anything on the news, it's always about a supply and demand issue. So now we're going to go to the small landlords and we're going to be like, you are the ones that are going to help fix us. Now, how are you going to fix this? Oh, well, we want you to open up your basements. We want secondary suites. The province already wants it. The municipalities are now putting their rules in place to enforce it, which they have to be very careful on how doing that as well, because you need to encourage investors into buying these homes, to split them, to make duplexes, to even make triplexes with them, use what we actually have.
This has always been very controversial over the years, though. Municipalities have not wanted basement apartments, for example, to be an option. Why not?
I think it's just for the safety of the people doing renovations and not having big enough windows, having it more of a fire hazard. But if you look at where people are actually living today, we have tent cities in Cambridge. We have 5 tent cities. We have shelters that are looking for donations left, right, and center because they don't have the money to even keep running them and putting beds there. So we need to be looking at the secondary suites. But what is actually going to get landlords to doing it? They're not just going to do it because you cut the red tape at a municipal level. They're not doing it because the Residential and Tenancy Act and the Landlord and Tenant Board is there to protect the tenants.
So what's it going to take, Mark?
If I can add to that, like the business about a human right for everybody to be able to live. Like you look at most young couples who want to live in downtown Toronto. Yeah, they'd love to live in downtown Toronto. They can't afford to live in downtown Toronto, so they've got to move out. They've got to, if they're buying a home, buy outside the core and commute. And in many cases, they've got to put in a unit in their basement so that they can get income to help pay the mortgage and pay the taxes. And one of the reasons I think the cities are much easier about this now is they realize that many people need that extra income to help pay the property taxes besides all the other expenses. So I think that to the point that was made, that it is small landlords who will eventually make up. And I just think that tenants should not have greater rights than owners to say, I'm entitled to live in the city of Toronto at cheap rents, even though you can't buy a house here. I should be able to buy cheap rental housing here. I think people have to go where they can find a nice place to live for them and their family, just like young couples have to do the same thing today all over Ontario.
Let's understand the big picture here. Ken, I appreciate that your position would be you'd like to see much more significant government investment in purpose-built rental units and allow that to be unlocked.
Certainly.
I get that. But, okay, hang on.
imperative.
I know. That's not the question, though, because I know the answer to that one already. How much of a solution to this problem is what they've just described, unlocking secondary suites and that kind of thing?
Well, it's a partial solution, but there's definitely some problems with this kind of housing. One, it's not permanent. You know, it's the young couple starting off in their basement, and then the young couple starts having children. The young couple's income goes up. They don't need the base. They don't need the income anymore. The tenant's out on the street. So the tenants lived there for 5 years. That's nice. They just got their kid into the school, and they have to move because the landlord wants to retake occupancy. So it's a constantly shifting market. There's units going in, there's units going out. That's not helpful. We have the same problem with condominiums. The condominium's rented, the tenant moves in, they're settled there, and then the market's gone up. Hey, I can make a profit here, I can sell it, and the new owner wants to move in, so the tenant has to move. This does not create good communities when we have people constantly being pushed from pillar to post. That's why we need purpose-built rental. But then we saw the minister out in front of that purpose-built rental around the corner here. 2-bedroom apartments are $6,000 a month. who exactly is paying that $6,000 a month?
Okay, let me fill in the blanks. Hang on, let me fill in the blank. You're talking about Steve Clark a couple of weeks ago, Minister of Municipal Affairs, actually had a press conference 5 blocks north of here at Yonge and Montgomery.
I thought it was just around the corner.
It was pretty much just around the corner. And he went to a place to say we're taking rent controls off future purpose-built rental units in hopes of springboarding a lot of construction of that. And yes, there were units in that building that went for anywhere between $2,000 and $6,000 a month. Now, having said that, that's at Yonge and Eglinton, which is one of the more expensive neighborhoods, in the city. But
it's what the minister picked to showcase his policy.
I agree. It might have been an unusual choice, but does anybody really think anybody should be entitled to live in Yonge and Eglinton for $250 a month?
Well, they should be entitled to live somewhere where they can get to and from their job and not have all their income eaten up by rent payments. And what that takes, it doesn't have to be at Yonge and Eglinton, but where is it going to be? And we need a program. The federal government is talking about a national housing strategy that's going to provide housing for everyone. The province has signed on to that. I believe that this current government has continued that commitment to participate in the national housing strategy. So the small landlords are contributing something, but the size of the crisis is not going to be solved by these individual efforts. That taking the barriers away,
Let me
the
get Kayla on
biggest
this.
barriers, I think Kayla knows a lot of the municipal barriers and how they make things difficult for people, but some of the barriers are...
Okay, Ken, hang on a second.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
I can definitely, from what he has stated about a family moving in and then all of a sudden the landlord wants to take over and use that space again, that is happening, but not because they don't want to be landlords and want that space. They're doing it because the tenants could be difficult type of tenants, and that's the only way for them to get out of the market is to say, I've tried it, I've tested it out. I don't like the way I'm treated. I don't like how the rules are in favor of the tenants and not me, and how this tenant can live below me and smoke and cause garbage all over the place and parties, and I can't do nothing about it because they can stay in there between 8 and 12 months. And the way that there's a lack of adjudicators right now in Ontario, we're seeing longer wait times before we even get to the hearing. That's not even including the tactics that the tenants use to avoid evictions.
Joita, I do have to say, it is hard to think of another provider of a service and a group that avails itself of that service that like each other less than landlords and tenants. Do you find that to be the case?
Well, honestly, yes and no. I mean, when things go bad, things get bad, but often things work out quite well. With that said, I want to keep hammering home this point that we live in a landlord's market. I've given you a lot of numbers, but let's talk about what affordability or housing affordability is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be 30% of somebody's income after tax. Most Torontonians...
Well, that was a benchmark that was set, half a century ago, and I'm not sure that anybody pays that little anymore, right?
Perhaps, but they shouldn't be paying, just about everything they take in. There has to be a sweet spot, I want to just respond to Kayla's point about tenants, dragging things out and the eviction process dragging on forever, causing hardship. I would argue it causes hardship on both sides. Even tenants have the sword of Damocles hanging over their heads. Will I or won't I have a place to stay? So there is an argument to be made for perhaps hiring a few adjudicators to bring some peace of mind to both sides. But beyond that, to Ken's point, finding ways to alleviate some of the barriers to the secondary rental market, whether it's permitting secondary suites, whether it's, and this is something we've pushed for at the Federation for quite a while, offering training for landlords and ensuring that they are certified in order to do this business, and they're checking off their, they're crossing their T's and dotting their I's and making sure they're providing an essential service. These are all measures that will have a limited impact. But if we're looking for a silver bullet, the secondary rental suite, the secondary rental market is not the answer. We have to reinvest in purpose-built housing.
Can I understand this as well? To be a landlord, you've got a big smile on your face right now.
Oh,
you wanted to go back on that.
Yeah, it was just more of the
I'll hold off on my question for a second.
It's trying to find the landlords and secondary suites are not being part of the solution, but what other one are we looking for right now? To the government with empty pockets. That's who they want to get going, but it's not the government. It's not government fund. It's taxpayers. So we're all paying for the overall, and they can't keep up with the supply. So you need to start looking at other type of ways of getting that in. And it's not about like condos and secondary suites and and development. It's about changing the system and how it runs. Landlords need proper tools to run a proper business, and we're not being allowed to have those tools because it's so heavily government focused and controlled.
Do you have to get a license to be a landlord?
Yes, this is starting to spread like a wildfire right across Ontario. I and the other landlords in our group, we already put it to, it's a cash grab. And it's a simple cash grab because if you look at the landlord licensing from one side of the province to another, it's going to fluctuate from $75 flat rate fee up to how many, like up to $1,000, and it all depends on what type of rooms. And there's certain type of requirements that you have there. So landlords in Toronto and the investors in Toronto, they're trying to get their investments now into Windsor, Sarnia, Waterloo. But when you start to see that there's water billing, there's landlord licensing that's happening.
Do you think you should have to be licensed at all
No.
to be a landlord?
No.
Just put the shingle out, you're open for business.
That's what we need, and that's what we need in this in 2018 right
Joanna's
now.
shaking her head.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, come on. Doctors need a license. Lawyers need a license. Engineers need a license. Everybody needs a license. You're telling me that if you're a landlord providing an essential service, you don't need a license? This is a non-controversial idea to say that if you're a provider of an essential service, that you should have a license. It's the cost of doing business. It's laughable to suggest that that's an impediment to landlords. But, I'm sure we're going off topic.
We already have a hard time now getting people with money getting into this industry. Putting other stipulations and more control on them, we need more investors into this. And having rules of, here's a house, landlord, put it this way, tenants, they will have the Residential and Tenancy Act, the Landlord and Tenant Board, they will have the property standards, they can have their city councillor, they can have their MPP, and they'll have their MPP if the landlord is not doing their part in going ahead and make sure that they have a safe and suitable place for their tenants to have, and the enforcement unit of the Ministry of Housing.
The political reality at the end of the day is that there are way more of them than of you.
And that's why they keep winning.
But that's, you see, they made that announcement, we're taking off rent controls to try to spur landlords to create more rental units.
Not gonna work.
There's no saying that another government may not show up in 2 years, just like the Liberals did 2 years ago, and say, guess what? All those rental-free units, we're putting back rent controls. And that's why you're not going to see more of that based on that. And some people say, okay, we'll allocate a certain number of units in a building for low-income housing. Okay, you don't think developers have already looked at this and said, okay, if we're going to build a beautiful, a nice condominium and charge this much a square foot, but then we're going to get government money and we're going to allocate a certain percentage to low-income housing, how is that going to sell? And they sit there with their marketing departments and go, yeah, we're good citizens in this country, but nobody's going to buy any of those units, fellas. If they could have built those units, they would have been built,
right. So,
but they're not,
okay.
and they're not for a
And
reason because it
I got a
doesn't
minute.
work, and we can't just subsidize.
I got a minute and a half to go. Ken, go
that's
ahead.
the fundamental problem, is the tenants don't have the ability to pay the rents that it takes to build new units in the private market. And, we're doing our best to suppress people's income. We're keeping the minimum wage down. We're freezing social assistance. No more income for anybody. So how are they supposed to pay these rents that it takes to get the private market to build? It can't be done. There has to be, if we're going to properly house the people of this province, there has to be public investment. We shouldn't make the small landlords bear the brunt of taking care of the poorest and people with the most barriers. It's a social responsibility. We should all be contributing to it through our taxes to make sure that these people are housed. And don't put it on to Kayla and her group, solve our social problems. We all have a responsibility to solve the social
On that note of
problem.
consensus, because I suspect you agree that you shouldn't single-handedly be responsible for solving the housing crisis in Ontario, right?
You just took the words out of my mouth.
On that note of consensus, I'm grabbing it and running in with it and saying thank you all for coming on the program tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to have you all
Thank you.
here.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.